Okay, everybody, welcome. Looks like we have a really great number of people attending today, and that's really exciting for us. This is our second presentation of the home insemination webinar, and we're actually going to be joined by several others today. I am Michelle Ottey. I am the Laboratory Director and Director of Operations for Fairfax Cryobank. I will be presenting the overall slides and some information for all of you. And we are joined by Kate Wisda, our Women's Health Nurse Practitioner for Pacific Reproductive Services in Pasadena. Kate's one of our NPs there, and she is going to present information about the actual INSEM process and be there to answer your questions. And we have our fantastic Director of Client Services on audio, Cheryl Daubenberger. Cheryl, want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl's going to be here for some questions as well. Morgan Barker is our Senior Marketing Manager, and she is going to be moderating the webinar and moderating the questions and answers at the end. As we're going along, please feel free to submit questions in the webinar toolbar that should be on your screen, and Morgan will go through those and moderate that at the end. So I always like to start with some goals, and the goal for our webinar today is really to give you an overview of what you need to complete a home insemination, including what kind of sperm vials you can use, and to explain the home insemination process, and then of course to answer your questions. So before we dive in, I wanted to share this with you all. We have a wonderful real family story. Oh, I went to the wrong slide, sorry. We have a wonderful real family story to get us started. This adorable family is growing their family with Fairfax Cryobank, and you can follow their journey on Instagram. We loved this quote, so we wanted to share it with you all. We're eager to share our journey with you all. Despite the unexpected halt placed on all fertility treatments due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are choosing to continue trying to conceive even while we can't leave. Thanks to Fairfax Cryobank, we can safely continue on our path to pregnancy during quarantine through home insemination using donor sperm. They've got a bunch of great hashtags there that you all can follow on Instagram. Now, before we dive in, we want to get a sense of where you all are starting from. So we're going to put up a poll. You can answer the question right on the screen. How familiar are you with home insemination? Give you all a few moments to answer that, and we'll see those. Okay, the poll is open. Great. Okay, the poll's closed. So it looks like about 75% of you are considering yourselves to be beginners, that you're at the beginning of this process. And that's great. This is the perfect webinar for you. We're going to give you all of the basic information that you need. We've got about 24% saying they have a medium understanding. Great. Hopefully we can get a little bit more in depth and help you further that. And we've got 2% saying expert. So maybe if you've done this before, you can also weigh in during the Q&A. So thank you all for answering that. All right. Just to get started, I always like to start with some basic terminology that we're going to be using throughout the webinar, some acronyms that you may or may not be familiar with. First is ART, Artificial Reproductive Technology. We have ICI, which is intracervical insemination, and I'll be talking about that in terms of a process as well as a type of donor sperm. IUI, intrauterine insemination, again, a process, a medical procedure, along with a type of preparation of donor sperm, and then a home insemination. And general overview of home insemination is it's an ICI, an intracervical insemination that somebody can perform in the comfort of their own home to attempt to achieve pregnancy. Now, is home insemination right for you? We're assuming that if you're on this webinar, you're very interested in pursuing home insemination. And so there are a couple of things that you need to consider before you decide to take this route. One, are you free of fertility issues? Just generally, are you within a healthy, fertile age range? Do you have any known or suspected fertility issues, any previous issues, irregular periods, previous infections that could potentially affect your ability to get pregnant? Second, are you comfortable with doing the insemination in your home? Are you comfortable inseminating yourself or having a partner inseminate you? Third, have you discussed family building with a medical provider? It's important to have a general assessment and understand your own reproductive health before you start this journey. And fourth, and very importantly, is home insemination an acceptable legal option for you in your home state? Now, being one of 50 states is great. We have different laws in each of our states. There are different parentage laws in each of our states. And so we're going to ask that if you have questions about the legality or ability to do this in your state, you contact our client services team directly, either using the 1-800 number, or you can chat in with them and they'll be able to answer your specific questions. We don't want to get into the ability to go to all of our 50 states in this webinar. So we're going to ask that you work directly with our client services staff. Next, do I need to work with a medical provider? And the short answer is yes. It's important to work with a medical provider when you're going to undergo any medical procedures or begin your fertility journey. So Fairfax recommends that everyone starting this journey speak with a medical professional, whether that's a physician, a gynecologist, a nurse practitioner, a midwife. We want them to assess your health, your lifestyle, make recommendations to get your body ready for pregnancy. They may recommend vitamins. They may recommend some lifestyle changes to get you in your best shape so that you're ready to have a child. They also may recommend some fertility testing depending on your age as well as your medical history. And it's always best to ensure your readiness for pregnancy before you invest in this process, both time and money. So why try home insemination? A lot of times couples are told to try at home before starting in-office treatments. And when I say that, that typically will refer to heterosexual couples that are ready to start this journey. And they're often told, go home, try the natural way for a couple of months. And if things don't progress, if you don't achieve pregnancy, then we'll start in office. Home insemination is a great opportunity to have some equity in this process for single women or lesbian same-sex couples that want to start their family as well. So it allows you to do this in the comfort of your own home without making it into a medical procedure right away. We do recommend that if you try 1, 2, 3 inseminations and you have suspected issues or you can't achieve pregnancy, that you would then follow up with a medical provider. So to get started, I'm going to pass things over to Kate, our resident expert on insemination. She's going to cover some information for you all so you know exactly how to get started tracking your cycle.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. My name is Kate, and I'm a women's health nurse practitioner. And I wanted to talk to you today about in-home insemination. Before I begin, I would like to say that it's important to speak to your medical provider before deciding to get pregnant. They can do a preconception panel. They can draw different labs, do an assessment to make sure that it's okay for you to get pregnant. It's also important, while we're talking about in-home insemination today, that we do acknowledge that there is a pandemic and that there are risks associated with that. Please speak to your medical provider to know whether or not this is a good idea for you. Okay, so getting started. The person being inseminated must track their menstrual cycle and ovulation. Commercially available ovulation kits help to determine your fertility window. So I have to say, this is the absolute hardest part, the ovulation predictor kits. It's very different for everyone. When you ovulate will be very different. So you get these ovulation kits and you're trying to find out when you have an LH surge. If you notice on the screen, it shows you that there's an LH surge. It's a hormone called luteinizing hormone. It spikes 24 hours before you ovulate. You want to know when you're going to get that spike so that you can plan 24 hours ahead to inseminate. I can't stress this enough. You should take a month and practice. And I know everyone wanted to get pregnant yesterday, but the best thing to do is to take a month and practice your ovulation predictor kit. I would recommend the one with the 2 lines as opposed to the happy face. And I would also be careful on when you plan to inseminate. It might give you purple and blue circles, but it doesn't mean that that's the way it's going to work for you. I would also recommend getting a period app and recording your cycles so that you know when to predict your LH surge. so that when you are using the ovulation kit, you won't be surprised. Okay, next slide. Fertility window. You are most fertile for a 12 to 24-hour window, typically between days 10 and 15 of the menstrual cycle. I've had people ovulate on day 20. So it's really different for everyone. It's important to get an app if you can, because the apps will usually show you a cartoon like this, an image like this that tells you when you're most fertile. If you notice, it shows day 11 to day 15. For those women inseminating, we know that the sperm is going to have a shorter lifespan. So really your fertility is something more like 13, 14, 15. If you're having heterosex, day 11, day 12, the sperm is going to last anywhere from 3 to 5 days in the woman's body. But we know that thawed sperm is going to last a lot shorter lifespan, anywhere between 24 to 72 hours. So you want to get that ovulation and that insemination correct on the right time, the right day. Oh, I know what I wanted to tell you. If you're doing an ovulation predictor kit, a lot of women will ask us, well, when do I start testing? When do I start checking for ovulation? What you want to do is define the number of days in your cycle. So if your cycle lasts 28 days, you're going to subtract 17 from that. And I wrote this up for you. Hopefully you can read my handwriting. If your cycle lasts 28 days, you're going to subtract 17 and you're going to start testing on cycle day 11. If your cycle lasts 29 days, you're going to subtract 17 and you're going to start testing on day 12. It's likely that day 11, day 12, whenever you start, will be a negative, and that's fine. You want to see a negative before you see your positives. Okay, next slide.
That was great, Kate. Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm just going to take back over for a couple slides. I want to mention that Fairfax Cryobank has over 450 donors that you can choose from. Now, choosing your donor can be really fun. We typically recommend that when you want to start the process to choose your donor, you will make a list either in your head or on paper of characteristics that you value in yourself and other people, whether that be, you know, your ethnic identity is very important to you, or your educational background, or maybe it's, you know, a musical talent, or physical characteristics such as height or weight or hair color, things like that are good things that you can use to start whittling that list down. And we really do work on the lab side, which is where I spend most of my time, trying to build a really good diverse donor pool to meet the needs of all of our recipients. So you're going to choose your donor, and then you're going to purchase your vials. And I do want to just mention here, and it's on the slide, if you're interested in having more than one child, if you're interested in having full siblings, if you have the means to do so, we would recommend purchasing several vials ahead of time. So if you know that it's going to take a couple of cycles to get pregnant, and that you also want to have some full siblings, we would recommend purchasing vials up front. If you store them with Fairfax Cryobank and you end up not needing them all, if you're lucky and you get pregnant on the first try, and then you know, have down the road, you have a full sibling and you have some vials left over that have always been stored on site with us, you can sell them back to us for a partial refund. And our client services team, as well as the website, will have a lot more information about that for you. The CS team is fantastic. I can't say enough about them. They can help you navigate this entire process from choosing a donor through your purchase. So once you have your donor, you need to decide what preparation types you're going to purchase of donor sperm. And we currently sell ICI preparation, IUI preparation, and then IUI and ICI art vials. I just want to briefly talk to you about what that means and how these vials can be used. So an ICI, or intracervical insemination prep, is a standard sample. That sample is obtained from the donor. We do a semen evaluation to determine how best to freeze it, how much freeze media to add, and we you know, take measure all of the parameters to determine the health of that sample, and then we add that freeze media, and the freeze media contains something called glycerol. And the purpose of that glycerol is really to help the sperm survive the freeze thaw process. Because as you can imagine, it's not fun for the sperm to be frozen and thawed. It can cause broken membranes, but that glycerol is going to help that process. It replaces the water so ice crystals don't form. And so the sperm have a better freeze thaw survivability. You are going to get at least 10 million total motile sperm in an ICI vial, and 10 million total motile sperm is more than enough for one insemination attempt. So one ICI vial equals one insemination attempt. We also sell IUI, or intrauterine preparation vials. These vials are processed a little bit differently. The semen evaluation is completed. We then use a wash media to get rid of the seminal fluid. And the reason we do that is that seminal fluid has proteins and hormones in there that, if inserted into the uterus, will cause severe cramping and problems. So you want to wash that out for an IUI sample. This IUI prep will also have a minimum of 10 million total motile cells. They too can be used for an at-home insemination where you're doing an ICI insem on yourself or on your partner, because again, you have that 10 million total motile cells, which is what you need for an insemination. The ART prep types are going to have a lower number of total motile sperm in them, at least 6 million, but probably more. And the reason we do these is that if somebody is moving forward with IVF, you don't need as many sperm to fertilize an egg when it's in the dish. So we wanted to offer a lower cost solution for that. That being said, if, for example, your donor only has ART prep type available, you can combine 2 vials and use them for one insemination. So that's our donor sperm prep types. So again, you can use an ICI prep type for an at-home insemination. You can use an IUI prep type for an at-home insemination, or you can use the ART prep types. If you're going to order for an IUI with a medical provider, you can purchase the IUI and they're pre-washed. You can purchase the ICI and your doctor or medical provider clinic will have to wash that sample before they do the insemination. If there are additional questions about this, we can do it at the Q&A. All right, so in the process of ordering the donor sperm, you're going to talk to our CS reps, or you're going to chat with them, and you're going to tell them that you are interested in doing a home delivery. In order to do this, we need a home delivery authorization form, and you're going to contact CS to get that form from them, and they're going to walk you through the process. You'll get it filled out, it'll be authorized by a medical provider, and then we'll get your order placed. You'll arrange with CS to have the order shipped, and you're going to receive a Fairfax Cryobank box with a liquid nitrogen vapor shipping tank that's going to contain a cane sleeve that has a cane that has your sperm vial on it, which I have up here. You're also in that shipment, I'm actually going to go to the next slide here. You're also in the shipment going to receive paperwork. It's going to be instructions for home insemination and and the thaw procedure that's going to walk you through exactly what to do with the vial when you're ready to use it. And you're going to receive a sterile needleless syringe. This is what you will use to complete the insemination, and Kate's going to walk us through that part of it. You're going to want to leave this closed until you're ready to get started. And then just to get going on what you need to do the home insemination, you want a comfortable space, you need your needleless syringe, you need your sperm sample, you need your instructions, and we're also going to recommend that you have some sort of insulated gloves, either garden gloves or something like that, because you're going to be working with that liquid nitrogen vapor tank, and that maintains a temperature of about -150 degrees Celsius to keep that sperm cryopreserved. So it will cause a burn if you touch the inside of the tank, and possibly even the aluminum cane may cause a liquid nitrogen vapor burn if you touch it without gloves. So please do wear gloves. And then we do recommend eye protection. If you have glasses, that's sufficient. If you have goggles or a face mask or something like that, you can use that. The reason we recommend that is sometimes when you open the vial, it can have a little bit of an aerosolized, like an aspirate there. So we would just recommend that you have some eye protection as well. If you don't, do it far away from your face. Okay. All right. I'm going to turn things back over to Kate, who's going to go through the InSem process for you.
Okay. So the first step is to prepare the space. When you know you're going to do your in-home insemination, it's important to have a comfortable, safe space. Ideally, you will be reclining on your back and remain in position for up to 2 hours. So most people like to do it in their bed, in their bedroom. If you feel that lowering the lights and lighting some candles makes you feel relaxed, and then that's what you're going to do. If just putting on a new set of sheets and making the bed and putting 5 throw pillows on your bed makes you feel better, then that's what you're going to do. Just make sure that you're feeling minimal stress, that you're happy and relaxed. Now, feeling excited or feeling a little nervous is okay. That's fine. That's part of it. But just try to minimize stressors. Take a minute, think about what makes you happy, what makes you comfortable. Okay, next slide. Prepare yourself. Place yourself in a positive frame of mind. Focus on relaxation. Meditate if that appeals to you. Breathe mindfully. So breathe mindfully, I think, is something that's extremely important. If you do what I call yoga breathing, deep, deep breaths, you will actually relax your pelvic muscles. You're not going to feel that you're relaxing them, but you are. And it will help the whole process be a lot easier. And you'll feel a lot more comfortable. So get your yoga breath on, make breathing noises. It's going to help. Next slide. Okay. Insemination. Gather everything needed and place on a solid surface. So in nursing, we know that when you're going to do a procedure, you have everything in front of you that you need. That would be my first tip to you. So if you think you're going to need an extra washcloth or a paper towel, you want to have that out and ready. You don't want to keep running in and out of the room. It will make the experience much less stressful and more enjoyable. You're going to open your needleless syringe, leaving it in the wrapper. This is your needleless syringe. And you just peel one side of it open. You can see how I did that. It has this little tab and you peel it open. And you can see there's no needle in there, just a tip, okay? You'll need a towel or a cloth. The sperm vial thawed per the instructions from the cryobank. You're going to remove the tank lid and you'll see a puff of vapor. That's normal. Wearing those gloves that we talked about, you're going to carefully remove the cane holding the vial. You can see this is the cane. There's a little top, and this is the vial. It just pops right off. Wrap the vial in a cloth or paper towel to dry off any condensation. It's going to develop around there, so wipe that off. And you're going to leave at room temperature for 15 to 20 minutes to allow the sample to thaw. Now, you're going to read online. There's all kinds of different ways to thaw using a bath. I had one patient that put it in her armpit to warm it up. We're lucky in that you don't need to do that with our vials. You can just leave it on the kitchen counter for 15 to 20 minutes at room temperature, which is, I don't know, 65 to 75 degrees. So it's really easy in that way.
Kate, before you move on, I just want to add, it actually is important to follow the thaw instructions like Kate is saying, and not actually thaw it in your armpit or at body temperature. We want to thaw it at room temperature. It's a less severe temperature shift for the vial, and we're just trying to make it easy for you. So just leave it on the counter for 20 minutes.
It's much easier. Our instructions are very clear. Insemination. The person doing the insemination, self or partner, will wash their hands thoroughly. I do want to take a second to say that you can do this yourself. You don't have to have a second person. You just need some basic range of motion and a safe space, and you can do it yourself. The person doing the insemination, self or partner, will wash their hands thoroughly. Obviously, we've been doing that during quarantine. The person being inseminated will lay on their back with their hips elevated. Use a cushion to support the back. So the reasoning here is that you want to put a cushion, I would say probably closer to your buns. You want your hips tilted up. We don't want any of the sperm to come out of the vagina. Gravity will work against you if you're flat on the bed, and if there's any tilting, you might lose some sperm. We're using a very small sample, but there are millions of sperm in there. So if you lose a tiny amount of that sperm, you could potentially lose 1 million sperm. So it's important to make sure that your hips are tilted up. What else? Pick up and gently mix the sperm vial. Allow the volume to settle to the bottom. So you'll be able to determine when it is thawed by inverting it, and it will help mix the sperm. So this is inverting. This is not inverting. This is not inverting. So invert very slowly. Be careful with it, baby it, and just put on your counter. Open the syringe, which I showed you how to do. Pull the plunger up to break the seal and push it back in its original position. So I don't know why this happens, but every time you get a syringe, it's stuck. They're always stuck and they're really stiff. And so you kind of have to wiggle them a little so that it doesn't get stuck. If you do get stuck and you push really hard, it's going to force air or whatever else is in there out of it. Suddenly it gets in your face. That's kind of a nursing trick. All nurses know you have to mess with the syringe. It's important to know that you're going to get a 1 milliliter syringe, but you're only going to get about 0.5 ml of sperm. Okay, so when you pull out your vial, I don't know if you can see this, maybe it's a little too close. When you get your vial, it's going to be about here. It's going to look like you got gypped. You didn't get gypped. It's just a small sample, and there are 10 million sperm in there. Okay.
I already went to the next slide, Kate, sorry.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say is when you're getting in position, you want to put your heels up on the bed as if you were at the gynecologist. You don't need to have stirrups, you don't need to have that special table, but put your heels on the table, put the cushion under your bottom, and tilt your hips up, okay? You and your partner will carefully open the sperm vial by unscrewing the cap. Easy to open. You'll slowly and carefully draw the sample up into the needleless syringe. This is your syringe, goes in the vial, and then you just pull the plunger up. I hope that you can see that. Pull the plunger up. And like I said, you'll probably get about this much, about 0.5 ml. I do want to show you just a little trick. At the very tip, you can see that there's air in there. So if you want to draw up maybe just a little bubble, like a 1/10 of an ml before you start, that will help make sure that that sperm gets out of this little tip. So when you're done inseminating, check the tip, make sure there isn't any sperm in there. If there is, that could be 1 million sperm just in that tip. So you want to get that out. Putting a tiny bit of air into the vagina is fine. It's not like drawing blood. Slowly and carefully draw up the sample into the needleless syringe. Place the syringe into the vagina as far as it will go with the tip close to but not touching the cervix. You don't have to touch the cervix. Once you get the syringe into the vagina, it's going to be very close to the cervix. Michelle is going to point out to you where the cervix is. It's about 2.5 centimeters. It's very small. There's an opening in it called the os. The os can point any direction it wants. Your cervix can point any direction that it wants. A lot of patients report that someone once told them that their cervix is tilted or it's off to the side. That's absolutely okay for this. You can still get pregnant, and we'll give you some more tips on how to ensure a better success rate. Gently expel the sperm sample onto the cervix. To get it out, you just press on the plunger, which you can't see because my hand's in the way. Press on the plunger. I like to go really slow. And the best way that I know how to do it is to go follow the lines. Do a little bit, wait a couple seconds, a little bit more, wait a couple seconds, a little bit more. Okay, so you'll do it nice and slowly. Remove the syringe and relax. If you ladies have noticed, this syringe is very, very small. It's thinner than my finger. So there should not be much discomfort with this, okay? Remain laying comfortably for about 30 minutes, but up to 2 hours. Shift your position from abdomen to back every 20 minutes. This will help prevent any achiness. And I was telling Michelle earlier that I really like this idea because there is, if you look at your diagram, there's an area in the vagina called the posterior fornix. So imagine that this model is laying on their back with their buttocks on the bed. The sperm will actually settle in that posterior fornix. So if you're laying on your back for 20 minutes, eventually it's going to kind of settle in that area. And when you flip to your stomach, it's going to wash the cervix with the sperm all over again. And then you lay for 20 minutes, flip back again, and you're washing the cervix. It's a really great way to help encourage the sperm to get into the cervix. And I'd never heard that before, but I thought it was such a great idea. Okay, next slide. Okay, post-insemination. Some individuals will use a soft cup placed on the cervix after the sperm is expelled. It's not necessary, but some find it helpful. I think it's a great idea. I actually Googled soft cup and I found it on Amazon. You can get a pack of 4 or 5 for $30, $40, I don't remember. You can also use a cervical cap. You can use a menstrual cup, whatever you have. And it will encourage the sperm to stay at the cervix. So you imagine the sperm, when it comes out of the vial, it's going all different directions. It's swimming all different directions. If there's really good cervical mucus, that will encourage it to go into the uterus, but it's not guaranteed. You still get some rogue sperm swimming all over the place. But by having a cap and encouraging that sperm to stay at the cervix, you'll have a much higher success rate. It will encourage the sperm to stay there. I hope that makes sense. Remaining reclined allows the sperm to swim through the cervix and into the uterus, up to the egg and the fallopian tube. Some individuals choose to do multiple inseminations during the fertile window in one cycle. Speak to your medical provider about this option if you have questions. Now, I've read probably every study done on this. There's a lot of studies that have been done on whether or not you should use 1 vial or 2 vials. It's about 50-50, the verdict's out. The studies are very different. Some say that you should, some say that you shouldn't. We don't know. We don't know if 1 vial or 2 vials is best. I don't know if there's a cap. Do you cap out at using 10 million sperm, or is it better to use 20 million? I don't really know. So it's good to talk to your medical provider about that. We do find some situations in which it's best to do 2. When we're doing intrauterine insemination, if someone's having difficulty determining when they ovulate, if someone is a little bit older in age, we know that sometimes they ovulate a little bit earlier and we want to be careful, and we can do 2 inseminations. So if you have a situation like that, your doctor may be able to give you advice. Okay,
and just
slide.
as an aside, we do know there have been some other studies that we've looked at, and I've reviewed some papers where they say that if you go down to like 7-8 million, you're probably going to have the same type of success that you would with 10 to 12 million. But anything lower than that, your success rates start dropping. And then there was one paper that we have reviewed that from years ago that basically said that anything above 12 million, like you're not necessarily, your success rate doesn't increase exponentially with the number of sperm. So 10 million is sort of the industry standard for what's acceptable for 1 insemination. If you wanted to go a little bit higher, I will tell you that our vials tend to have more than the minimum. Just saying that on the left side. But also you could opt for the 2 ART prep types, and that's automatically going to give you at least 12 million, if not 15. Okay.
Right, absolutely.
Next slide is, do you want to do this one here?
Yeah, I just wanted to repeat that your fertile window is usually 12 to 24 hours after your positive OPK. So a positive ovulation predictor kit shows that you're having an LH surge. We know that you're going to ovulate roughly 24 hours after that.
Okay. So I just wanted to address the IUI as well, because one of the questions that we get a lot is, well, why can't I just do an IUI at home? So Kate, you want to take that?
Yes. I mean, my first answer to that is there's a risk of infection. You're going, if you notice this diagram over here, there's the same syringe, but then there's a long tube, a long straw on the end of it, and it actually goes in through the cervix, the opening in the cervix, the os, and it goes into the uterus. So that is a sterile space that it's going into. So if you're introducing bacteria to it, you do run the risk of having a uterine infection. It's something that we require a medical provider to do. Doing IUIs is a medical procedure. We recommend that IUIs only be completed by medical professionals. It requires that a catheter be passed through the cervix into the uterus where the sperm is deposited. Bumping or scratching the cervix or uterine wall can cause cramping. There's also a risk, a small risk of perforation where the straw could go through, but it's small risk. And then again, risk of infection, risk of uterine infection. If anyone is interested in IUIs and you're in the Pasadena area, I wanted to show you my card. We are available as soon as this pandemic gets up.
That's right.
To do intrauterine inseminations. You're welcome to call. Yeah, and then you're welcome to do the next slide. Okay.
All right. So what is the cost of a home insemination? Well, it is basically the cost of the donor sperm, the shipping and handling, and then we're going to give you the needleless syringe, the home instructions as part of that, and it's whatever else you need. If you want to buy some new candles and set the mood, whatever works. So the cost is basically the cost of the donor sperm. The other thing that we are often asked is, well, what is my success rate of doing an ICI, and what is my success rate for getting pregnant using frozen donor sperm? Kate?
Yes, if you have no fertility issues or concerns, we say about 10 to 15% success rate per cycle, similar to fertilization rates through intercourse. We know that typically we say something like a 5% chance for women of reproductive age, but that includes those outliers. That includes people with uncontrolled diabetes, people who are underweight. But if you have no fertility issues, no major comorbidities, we see something like a 10 to 15% success rate. It can take several insemination attempts to achieve pregnancy. Typically, the number we go by is 3. So if you try 3 times and you'd like to come in for an IUI, that would make sense. If you are not pregnant after several home attempts, it is best to speak with your medical professional about having a fertility assessment.
Great. So I think this was great. Kate, thank you so much for being a part of this. I think it definitely added to the content and the value. The bottom line is that home insems are available to individuals and couples who are not facing significant fertility issues that want to try to conceive in the privacy of their own home. We wish you the very best of luck in your journey. And before we go to our Q&A, I'd like to just check in. Let's see where we all are. How familiar are you with home insemination after this webinar content? Answers are coming in and it's looking good. Fantastic. It looks like 71% of you are now considering yourself to have a medium understanding, which is great. We moved the beginners all into the medium, and then we've got now 23% experts. There are still 6% of you that feel like you're at a beginner stage, and that's totally fine. The content of the webinar is going to be emailed out to everybody, including the recording of Kate and myself. And hopefully we'll get you a little further along in your understanding. But this, I think, was fantastic. So let's go to our Q&A. Oh, I'm clicking too many buttons here. And I do want to share that we have a promo code for anyone who's here today, Home Insem. If you want to save 20% on any semen purchases through tomorrow, April 30th, the end of the day, get in touch with our CS staff, give them a call, and they'll help you out with that promo code. So Morgan, do you want to give us some questions?
Yep, we have a bunch of them.
Awesome.
One of the first ones here we have is how long do we leave the soft cup in for?
Kate?
Yeah, how long do you leave the soft cup in for? I'd say for the 2 hours. You're welcome to leave it in for, oh gosh, I don't know. If the recommendation is 24 hours, you could leave it in for 24 hours. I don't know. Do you know, Michelle, what the recommendation is?
Most soft cups tell you to leave them. You can typically wear, if you're using a soft cup for menstruation, they say 10 to 12 hours and then change it out.
Okay. And then do you suggest having sex prior to insemination?
I can answer that. So I think the question is more orgasm. We know that with contraction of the uterine muscles, that it can encourage the sperm to go into the cervix, through the uterus, into the fallopian tubes, where the egg is waiting. So yes, so as far as orgasm goes, yes. Having penetrative sex, I would not recommend that because of the sperm being in the vagina, you don't want it to come out. But it's your choice.
Okay, and another one for you is, when do you consider the first day of your period? I have light bleeding before it becomes heavy. Also, can I use Clear Blue Easy for my ovulation testing?
Okay, great question. I forgot to say this. The first day of your cycle day 1, is the first day of your period where you use a pad or a tampon. We call it a flow day. So if you are someone who spots for 3 days, just barely, you don't even need to use a panty liner, you don't count those 3 days. You count cycle day 1 as the day when you use a pad or a tampon. It's your flow day. I'm sorry, was there a second question?
I just said or a menstrual cup if you're not a pad or tampon person.
Yes.
Okay, another one here. If I want to use 2 vials for my home insemination cycle, when do I perform the first insemination and then the second?
Yes. So usually we recommend at 12 and 24 hours. So if you're doing your ovulation predictor kit and you get your 2 lines, the 2 lines will tell you that you're having an LH surge. Wait 12 hours, do an insemination, wait another 12 hours, and then do an insemination. So that would be at 12 and 24 hours after you get your positive OPK. And then as far as Clear Blue, I think was the second part of the question. I recommend getting the ones with the lines. They usually are more effective than the ones with the happy faces. And then again, it's going to tell you that you can start having sex 5 days before you ovulate. But if you're purchasing frozen sperm, your fertility window is shortened. You want to ovulate, I'm sorry, you want to inseminate closer to that ovulation day.
And the reason, just to reiterate something that Kate mentioned earlier, the reason that you want to inseminate closer to the actual day of ovulation is that frozen sperm does have a slightly shorter lifespan in the female reproductive tract than fresh sperm. She had mentioned that fresh sperm can last 4 or 5 days. There is, as with a lot of scientific papers, there's a lot of variation in the information you can find. And so we did some deep diving into this and basically found recommendations that frozen thawed sperm in the female reproductive tract can last anywhere from 12 to 72 hours. So because there is such a large range, we're going to recommend that you do your insemination as close to your ovulation day as possible.
And one related question that also came up is, how many days before your predicted ovulation day should you order the sperm to arrive?
Cheryl.
So that's a great question. We offer 2 types of delivery. I've got a next business day delivery or a second business day delivery. So you need to obviously keep in mind your upcoming ovulation time frame, and then allowing for that 1 or 2 business day delivery to be made to your residence. Now, all residential deliveries through FedEx are actually guaranteed to arrive sometime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. because the drivers need to stop their typical routes in the business world to go out to the individual residents. So it can be delivered as late as 8 p.m. So you want to take into account those couple of days prior to your surge with ovulation, so that way you're able to have that shipment come out. Now, when clients have cycles that are not as predictable, we send all of our semen samples out in a standard 7-day tank. It will keep the sample frozen from day 1 through day 7. Day 1 is the date of your shipment. And when we have clients that have more unpredictable cycles, we always recommend that you upgrade to a 14-day tank. So that way, with the unpredictable cycle, you'll have a little bit more time in case the surge for your ovulation actually happened a bit later than expected. That way you can guarantee the sample will still be frozen by the time you're ready to use it.
Okay, another question here. Can a female do her own insemination?
Yeah, Kate, you touched on that. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I want to say if you can put in a tampon, you can do your own insemination. It's just basic range of motion. I would actually say that it's completely okay for anyone. Sometimes when I do intrauterine inseminations, the women are uncomfortable having their partners there, and so they'll have the partner come in immediately after the insemination. You can do that at home too. If this feels too medical and not as maybe romantic or as special as you wanted it to be, you can ask your partner to wait outside and do it yourself. It's a very small amount. You just want to make sure that you're not spilling any sperm. Make sure you have your hips tilted upward. You can even put a mirror down below if you'd like. I know it sounds silly, but sometimes our patients will use their phones if they don't have a mirror, use the camera on a phone, and so you can see exactly what's going on. The syringe that you get is so tiny. There's no risk of damage. Just put it in slowly, and it's very easy to use, and you can use it one-handed. You don't need 2 hands to use it.
Another question is it important for the vial to stay upright the whole time?
So I can answer this. When you're thawing, I would say yes, because now I've got the vial here. If you notice when you get the vial, I know it's hard to see with these webcams, but there's a little gasket, a flexible gasket between the lid and the actual vial. Now you want to make sure that that's not bulging. If that's bulging, your lid's on too tight. If you have it to the side, there is the potential to get some of the sperm up into the threaded area of the lid. I don't know if you guys can see, it's really hard with the webcam, but it's a threaded lid that seals into the vial. And if you thaw it on its side, you might have some leakage. You shouldn't, but you might. And you may also get some caught in those threads. And like Kate was saying, you don't want to miss any of this volume. You want every single motile sperm that's in this vial for your insemination. So if it tips over, it's fine. I would just stand it back up so that the volume can settle back at the bottom for when you're gonna pull it out with the syringe.
We're getting a couple questions about shipments and everything. Some people wanting to know if they're able to ship 2 vials in one tank at one time.
And
Cheryl?
the answer to that question is absolutely. We are able to ship multiple semen samples in one tank at a time, and it is perfectly safe to actually use the first semen sample for your procedure. You'll just open up the lid from the tank. You want to take that the cane, which has the sleeve on it, out. You'll lift it up. You'll remove that first semen sample from the cane. You'll immediately then put that cane back in there, put it back inside of your tank, and seal it back up. When you're ready to use that second sample and you take the lid back off of your tank, you want to make sure you see a little poof of smoke, making sure that that tank is still charged, meaning that the vial was frozen by the time you were taking it out to start that thaw process. And again, as long as you use that semen sample or the semen samples within that 7 or 14-day time frame, the tank should be perfectly fine to continue to open as needed, to use the sample, reseal, and then fully charged, keeping that sample frozen until you're ready to inseminate the second time.
I just want to add on, Cheryl, that's great. One of the things that I do want to mention is when you first open the box and you have the paperwork on top of the tank, you're going to remove that paperwork. You're going to notice that the lid of the tank has a zip tie that's keeping it closed. And that the purpose of that is for shipping so that the lid doesn't somehow come off and your sample's not compromised. So you are going to need scissors. We didn't mention this. You're going to need scissors to cut that zip tie. And I really would recommend that when you first get it, you get to know what you're working with, get to know the tank. I'm a big fan of reading your directions start to finish before you play a game or do anything else. So do the same for your insemination. Read the instructions start to finish. You're going to cut that zip tie, you're going to pull that lid off, and as Cheryl and Kate both mentioned, you're going to see a puff of vapor. Again, keep your face away from it. The vapor just means that the tank is charged, it's keeping things cold. When you look into the tank, you're going to see that there's a frost line. There's going to be a neck, and then it's going to get wider, okay, like any bottle would. The frost line is going to be around that bottom of the neck. You want to try to keep, if you order 2 vials, you want to keep that second vial below the frost line when you're taking the first vial out. So don't just sort of haphazardly pull up your cane. You want to do it really carefully and intentionally and only pull it up as far as that frost line so that you're not exposing that second vial that's below the first one that you're going to use now to room temperature to start that thaw process. You want to keep it cold, so keep it below that frost line. And then after you do take that first vial off, when you're ready to use it, you're going to place the lid back in. You don't have to re-zip tie it in your home. You're going to just leave it alone and then do the same when you're taking out your second vial.
Another question here for Cheryl. We have a few folks who are located in Canada asking if U.S. sperm can be delivered directly to a Canadian home address.
And that's a really great question. And at this time, we are only able to ship to a residence within the United States due to different regulations within Canada and or internationally. So at this current time, it's only home inseminations within the United States that we're able to accommodate.
And then another question for Cheryl is someone here who is local to Fairfax, Virginia, wants to know if they can pick up both the sample and the home insemination kit. Would that still require the authorization form?
So we would still require that you are working with a medical professional that has a registered account here in our database. And from there, what would need to happen is once we've got that registered clinic in our database, you'd be able to call and place an order listing your clinic as the clinic that you're being advised by, and you are then able to come in and pick up your shipment. And after you use that sample, you just need to return that tank back to the lab where you picked it up.
And that applies to any of our locations. So Fairfax, Virginia, and we also have locations where Kate is in Pasadena in California. I'm actually located in our Philadelphia office right in University City. And then we also have locations in Roseville, Minnesota, which is very close to the Twin Cities, as well as Houston and Austin, Texas.
A couple of questions here. Is the IUI medical procedure more effective than at-home inseminations?
Kate?
Yes, it is. It is more effective. It's something more like 20% chance of getting pregnant. And that 20% chance is similar to heterosex, which is about 20% with each cycle. What did I want to say? That 20% includes those outliers that we talked about. So it does include people with comorbidities. It includes all women of reproductive age. IUI is more effective because that straw that's at the end of the syringe goes directly into the uterus. So the sperm does not need to swim anywhere, really. It just goes straight into the tube. It's a direct shot.
Okay. Is there any way to encourage cervical mucus?
Encourage, like to create more? No,
Mhm.
no, there isn't. If you're not getting cervical mucus, so we know that every woman has roughly 12 cycles in a year. One, maybe two of those cycles for the average woman, they're not going to ovulate. So if you are doing your ovulation predictor kit and you get a negative 1 month, that's not that crazy. You could have a month where you don't ovulate, where you might not get cervical mucus. But on the other months, you should be getting cervical mucus. And if you're not, I would talk to a medical provider.
Kate, one of the questions we had last time we did this webinar was, does arousal help to make a more, hospitable environment in the vagina and cervix area because it becomes potentially more fluid, more liquid in there?
Yes, it can. We know that cervical mucus has certain channels in it that encourage the flow of the sperm through the os of the cervix, the opening in the cervix, into the uterus. So yes, having more fluid can encourage that flow. The sperm, which we all know what they look like, they have little tails, little flagella, and they need that fluid or that current in order to swim. So yes, and then the contraction of the uterus as well can encourage them to swim upwards. Yeah, because like I said earlier, they're going to swim all the different directions. So any encouragement is helpful, such as the cervical cap or the soft cup.
We have a couple questions from people asking about fertility medicine, previously trying to do an IUI at their doctor's office. Is it worth trying at home? They do take fertility meds. And then another person asking about Clomid, specifically if that would help.
Okay, so the fertility meds that we use, typically first line is Clomid. That will encourage you to create a follicle, will have the follicle mature so that you ovulate. With that, we also can use something called Ovidrel, which encourages you to actually spit out that egg, which the Clomid helped grow. Whether or not you need medications is dependent on your medical provider. Doing medications and then doing in-home insemination, which I think was your question, you really have to work that out with your own medical provider, whether or not they want to do that. It really, there's a lot of factors that go into taking medication, and please don't discount that there are side effects to the meds. So we don't, it's not, if you find a provider that just gives it out like candy, that's not good. So make sure you find someone that will sit down with you, understand your fertility, and decide whether or not you need those medications.
Okay. Another person wants to know, you said you can't use IUI sperm for home insemination. Can you use ICI sperm for home or office visit insemination?
So just to clarify, you can use any of the sperm prep types for an at-home insemination. You can use the ICI, the IUI, or 2 ART vial prep types for an at-home insemination. If you're having an intrauterine insemination with a medical provider, you can use the IUI sperm, which doesn't need any additional processing, or you could purchase the ICI sperm if your provider has the ability to wash the sperm before insemination. So for example, at the clinic where Kate is, in our PRS clinic in Pasadena, they will often have clients who have, let's say, ICI prep, which is just a standard freeze of the sperm. The lab staff will take that thawed, wash it, place it in the catheter for the insemination. Does that answer the question, Morgan?
Mm-hmm.
I will say, just a side note, if you get the IUI or the ICI sperm and you're going to do an in-home insemination, you're going to get the same amount. You're going to get a 0.5 ml, so you're working with the same volume. So that is reassuring. You really don't have to get ICI or IUI, especially if you find a donor that you love, 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 and all they have left is IUI. You're welcome to purchase that. You'll get the same amount, so you'll be working with the same volume. Exactly. And it's actually the same count, 10 million.
Yes.
A few questions for Cheryl about the process of ordering for Home Insem online. They want to know if there's anything that they have to do on their end to discuss with client services. And then in regards to that question, another one asking, does my provider need to sign a release for authorization, and why is that?
That's a great question. So first portion of the question, So we will definitely need, depending upon your location, a provider to sign off. Again, it's all based on local state laws as to whether or not the clinic does need to sign off on that paperwork. So it's definitely always best to check with client services specifically to find out what will be needed and for them to then get documents sent out so that way you are able to receive the samples at your home address. Now, in reference to placing an order online, the online system is not able and set up for a home delivery. So if you're wanting to ship to your residence, you must call the client service team so that way they're able to get that order set up for you. If you tried to do that online, it will not allow you to ship to your residence. So instead of going through the online process, just cut that out altogether and give us a call so that way we're able to walk you step by step through that process so that way you're hopefully able to receive those semen samples directly at your residence for the procedure.
And then can you pick up the sperm if you're not doing home insemination and then deliver it to your healthcare provider?
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of clients do opt to do this at not only our main headquarters in Fairfax, but all of our other facilities across the country. So that way they are able to better coordinate with their clinic. A lot of procedures will be scheduled first thing in the morning. So clients will pick up the day prior to the procedure, keep that tank with them, and then show up to their procedure with the tank that has the semen for the procedure that they're about to undergo. So absolutely, you can pick up and deliver to your clinic.
Great. And I wanted to just share one final question and just let everyone know that Michelle will be providing answers to all of the questions that we have not gotten to today. There are some really great ones on here. She will be doing a blog post on our Fairfax Cryobank blog with answers to everything. So just here is our last question, but continue to add some if you have some for the call today. So one last question here is regarding our webinar series. Are there any more that we're planning on hosting down the road?
Yes, I'm very excited to tell you guys about the next webinar. We don't have a date yet. We're getting things set up, but our incredible genetic counselor, Suzanne Seitz, is going to be presenting on the expanded carrier screening that we do on all of our donors. And she's going to be able to answer anybody's questions. If you yourself know that you're a carrier and you want to know how to navigate the process of choosing an appropriate donor, she's going to go through all of that information. It's really great. As many of you know, the technology just continues to increase and improve over time. And so we've been able to add this expanded carrier panel testing for our donors. She'll answer questions about special testing for genetic diseases that aren't part of that. It's going to be a really great webinar. And as soon as we get that set up and have a date, Morgan will be getting information out there and promoting it. And then just to mention, you know, Morgan did say that I'll put together some answers for you all on the blog from the questions from this. I have our questions from last week as well. I'm going to get Kate and Cheryl's input as well so that we can answer in a fully rounded way and address all of your questions. I just want to say thank you to Cheryl for being on today and helping out with the CS relevant questions. And thank you so much too to Kate for answering all of our questions. I hope that you all found this to be really helpful and useful. I think you did based on the survey, which is great. And thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to having you back for additional webinars in our series. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.